What is going on, everybody? So I'm back today to do kind of a topic, kind of a recommendation video, a little bit in between, because a big topic that has been going around on the internet recently in the film community. I talked recently about the inclusion of sex scenes in films and how that is like a really big discussion that continuously goes on the internet. And another big discussion that I've noticed recently amidst a lot of films coming out in this runtime is movies that are 3 hours or close to 3 hours. Really anything that kind of pushes 2 hours and 40 minutes and above. There's been this huge discourse on the internet about should movies be 3 hours long? Should directors have to cut it down? And simply put, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter to me personally. If you're a director and you think that your movie needs to be 3 hours to, build up great characters, to kind of fully deliver the punch of whatever you're trying to convey, I 100% can get down with that. Are there movies that are 3 hours long that I feel like are incredibly self-indulgent and don't need to be 3 hours long? 100%. That has existed in all of cinema. I feel like most movies in that range could probably be edited down in one way or the other. But one of the silly things about this whole argument is people will sit down and binge 9 episodes of a television series on Netflix and not complain one bit about the fact that they just watched 9 hours of TV in one sitting. But when it comes to watching a 3-hour movie, they act like it's the end of the world. And unfortunately, I think because television is episodic, it gives them a reason to just think like, oh, it's different because of the way it's structured. But you're getting the story in the exact same way. So I don't really know why it's harder for people to do one than the other than like if you're at a theater and you're watching a 3-hour movie, you don't necessarily have the accessibility to hit pause and get up and go to the bathroom so you don't miss anything. Whereas at home, if you're watching a 9-hour episodic TV series, you can get up in between episodes, make yourself food, do whatever. But I am someone who thinks that like if a director feels like there's validity for a 3-hour runtime, I 100% can get behind it. And so today I thought it would be fun to talk about some 3-hour films that I really enjoy, or movies that are like, they're not all 3 hours on the dot, but between the ranges of 2 hours and 40 minutes to 3 hours, since apparently that is considered a super long runtime, and we'll get into it right now. So first up, we'll get it out of the way. This year's Beau is Afraid from director Ari Aster, which I feel like clocks in at around 2 hours and 59 minutes, right there at the 3-hour mark. And this is a movie that when I did the review originally, the runtime was one of the things that I complained about, because I do think there are moments in the movie that could be trimmed down. But for a 3-hour film, this is an incredibly immersive experience that is just completely a director's brainchild, just like thinking of all of these insane concepts associated with familial trauma and a relationship between a mother and a son, and done so in such a surreal, abstract way that can be oftentimes absolutely hilarious and oftentimes absolutely disturbing, to the point where you just feel so uncomfortable and uneasy watching the entire film. I myself am someone who has been through a lot of family trauma, so this movie resonated really heavily with me. I think there are some of the most beautiful moments I've seen in all of film in this. There are also some moments, like I said, that feel like they're a little bit bloated. But I think even if I feel like a movie is a little bit bloated and it keeps me immersed and engaged every second, there was not a moment that I wasn't interested. Even though in the back of my mind there were moments that I was like, hey, yeah, this could probably have been trimmed down like 5 or 10 minutes here or there. There wasn't a moment in the movie that I wasn't completely invested with what's going to happen next. And I feel like if you're a fan of Ari Aster, or if you're a fan of art house cinema, you're really going to love this movie if you haven't gotten around to seeing it yet. And I do think that even though it pushes that 3-hour marker, it is one of those movies that you're really going to enjoy if you're into this type of filmmaking. Up next is going to be one of my favorite films from 2021, and that is the film Drive My Car from Ryusuke Hamaguchi, which I believe is close to Beau is Afraid. I think it's like 2 hours and 59 minutes. Really long runtime, but this is a film that I will argue utilizes its runtime absolutely perfectly to where I would not trim out a second of this movie. I think it is perfectly paced. I think it is definitely slower at the beginning intentionally because you're living with this character and kind of getting the understanding of his relationship dynamic before the rug is completely pulled out from under you and the title card of the film doesn't drop until like 50 minutes into the movie, which just kind of had my jaw on the floor. But this is such a beautiful, intimate character drama about a man who loses his wife after finding out that his wife was having an affair on him. He ends up going to work on this production of a play that both of them were working on. And it's super cool because while you're watching the movie and you're getting this understanding of him and his wife's relationship, you're also getting this beauty in exploring empathy for other cultures and people of different backgrounds. Because one of the coolest parts of the movie is the performance that they are putting on casts actors from all different parts of the world, not just where they live. They've got actors from all over the place. And so when they're rehearsing around this round table, they have someone who only communicates in sign language. So like when you're going around this table and these people are communicating with one another, as soon as they read their line, and they hit the table so everyone next to them knows when to read the next line. And this movie really examines just the beauty of human beings as a whole in a way I've never really seen in a movie that just kind of bleeds empathy towards people. And just every scene in this is so quiet and nuanced in understanding everyone's experience and trauma. And I also think that it looks at like extramarital affair in a way that I've never seen before in a movie, that like is much more thoughtful and introspective than just like person did bad thing. There's a lot more layers in it that kind of leave you thinking for a really long time. And I think every performance in this is just absolutely incredible from top to bottom. I'm so glad it's in the Criterion Collection now. I picked up a physical copy on one of the sales recently. It's a movie I see myself revisiting over and over again for years to come. It's just absolutely brilliant. Up next is going to be a movie that hits 3 hours on the nose, and that is David Lynch's Inland Empire. This is not my favorite film in David Lynch's catalog, but I think that this is the pinnacle of getting inside of David Lynch's mind and seeing how it operates in the most strange and abstract way possible. I feel like it is his most tonally inconsistent film, because even when you listen to David talk about this movie, it is an amalgamation of ideas that he somehow managed to smash together and create a cohesive narrative. I say that with quotation marks because there definitely are moments in this where you're like, where did he go with that? But similar to what I said with Beau is Afraid, this is a 3-hour movie that will never lose your attention, because every second you're watching it, something really engaging or mysterious or hilarious is happening on screen. Laura Dern's performance is absolutely out of this world in this movie. She literally gives it her all in every single scene in this. There's some of the most horrifying imagery I've ever seen in a movie in this film. And despite the fact that it isn't my favorite David Lynch movie, it is a David Lynch film that I continue to appreciate more and more over time. And I think, you know, when you're a director who kind of got shoehorned into doing very specific things in his career, where you know, between Twin Peaks and like when he did Dune and like all of the different things where he had production studios taking Final Cut away from him or saying, hey, you can't do this and you can't do that. This is David Lynch doing exactly what he wants with no interference whatsoever. And I think that it's a fascinating look into when you give a director like complete creative control, to where you don't pull back on anything, you don't make them have to compromise anywhere, and you just let them do what the hell they want. I think it's a really fascinating piece of cinema that I grow to appreciate more over time, and I'm looking forward to revisiting it again soon, because it was recently released on Criterion. I still need to pick up my physical copy of it, but I am looking forward to getting that Criterion copy, see how the restoration looks, as good as they can do with the type of digital cameras that he was working with. But I think that it is a really unique piece of cinema that is definitely worth watching at least once. Up next is going to be the Martin Scorsese film, The Irishman from 2019, which I believe clocked in at like 3 hours and 20 minutes. I remember this was really kind of the start of when people were really starting to complain about 3-hour runtimes in films. And I remember when this movie was released that like people had broken it down into like chapters on how to watch it. Like, pause here when you get to this point, similar to what I said about the comical nature of people watching 9 hours worth of TV, but they can't manage to just watch a 3 hour movie. But I know this is one in Scorsese's catalog that people either really love or they really hate, and I absolutely loved this. I felt like it was like reading a really amazing book, and I also feel like this movie parallels really heavily to Scorsese's life, because you're looking at a person's life from very early on in their younger years all the way to when they're elderly, and they've kind of lived through the whole scope of their existence. And it really can, in my personal opinion, can sort of be seen as a parallel of what Scorsese's had to go through in his career as a director, and all the friends that he's made, the people he's had to watch die over the years. You know, you're kind of getting this really beautiful look into his life and the things that he's experienced, obviously through the lens of a gangster film. So he's done this throughout his career, and he's really good at it. And I know, like, a lot of people are saying, oh, it's more of the same, but I feel like the way Scorsese writes characters is so impressive, and I think Joe Pesci's performance alone in this movie makes it worth the 3 hour runtime. There are so many amazing sequences of dialogue in this film that are so tense and perfectly paced. The cinematography in it is fantastic. The blocking in this film, just like when there are dialogue sequences, just show why Scorsese is one of the best to ever do it. It's a movie I think about a lot, and it's one that I'm really looking forward to revisiting. I have a Criterion copy of this one as well. This was the year, I believe, that and Marriage Story both got Criterion releases, and they were both released on Netflix, which was really cool to see. But Scorsese's one I absolutely love. I know Killers of the Flower Moon is coming out this year, and I think it's got around a 3 hour and 20-minute runtime, and I will be there opening weekend. I cannot wait to see it. Up next is going to be the film A Hidden Life from director Terrence Malick. This one's a little under 3 hours. It's like 2 hours and 50 some minutes. This movie had my jaw on the floor from the first frame. I love Terrence Malick's cinematography. His movies are so dreamlike and ethereal, and this is a movie about the Holocaust that is done in such an unconventional way, where you have this man and his wife and his children. They live in this small town in Austria. It's during World War II, and the man is called to fight for the Nazis during World War II. He refuses because he does not agree with their ideologies. He thinks that what Hitler is doing is awful, and because of that, he is sent to prison, and his life is essentially threatened because he will not fight for the Nazi party. And so instead of getting a Holocaust film through the lens of what the Jews went through and seeing it through that perspective, you're looking at someone who disagrees with the ideologies of Hitler that is punished essentially for those actions. And so because of that, the beginning of the film is this really quiet and beautiful story about this family, and then when that call comes and he has to make this decision, the second half of the film is him trying to fight for his life in prison because he wants to get back home to his family. He wants to be able to live that life, but he's not willing to compromise his views in order to do that. He refuses to fight for Hitler. He refuses to commit those atrocities that the Nazis committed in that time period. And it's just a really beautiful film that really just kind of destroys your heart the entire time you watch it. But knowing that, you know, parallel to what people go through now, and that, like, people are standing up for what they believe in, and in states where things are really difficult, and that, you know, there's a lot of pushback from people, like, it can be hard to make those decisions. And obviously it's not to the same extent of going to jail and having your life threatened and told you will be killed for not doing this, but there are people whose lives are threatened for making those types of sacrifices. And it's just a beautiful movie that I think is so poignant even to this day. Love Terrence Malick, love this film, totally worth the 2 hour and 50 some minute runtime. Up next, I just watched this for the first time this year, and that is going to be Denis Villeneuve's Blade Runner 2049, which sits in around 2 hours and 50 minutes. This movie got done dirty in the box office. Not enough people went to go watch this thing. This is one of the best science fiction films that I have ever watched in my life. Brilliant performances, incredible cinematography, an amazing score from Hans Zimmer. It's just absolutely incredible what Denis Villeneuve was able to pull off after all those years between this film and Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. I think this movie surpasses Ridley Scott's Blade Runner in every single way imaginable. Better character writing, the whole idea behind, like, artificial intelligence and, like, how artificial intelligence is perceived. Could they get to a point where they're like more sentient and like human beings? And the original Blade Runner kind of grazes over that a little bit. Like it's you see it and you think about it, especially with Rutger Hauer's speech towards the end of the film, but nothing like this movie, where it's really the entirety of the film is an examination of that concept. And I think Denis is just absolutely incredible with the way that he's able to pull this off. Ryan Gosling's performance in this, amazing. Ana de Armas is phenomenal. Harrison Ford gives a fantastic performance. Clearly, he loves this source material and does an amazing job with it. And yeah, Blade Runner 2049, one of the best science fiction films ever. Love it a lot. And we'll go ahead and cap off this list with one of my favorite films of all time. This is probably one of the shorter ones on this list. I think it pushes like 2 hours and 45 minutes, 2 hours and 50. And that is Paul Thomas Anderson's There Will Be Blood. I love Paul Thomas Anderson. I feel like a lot of his films range in that like 2.5 hour range, but this one pushes closer to 3. Daniel Day-Lewis gives one of the best performances of all time in this movie. Truly just incredible what he's able to pull off with this. I know he's a method actor. He really gets into the performances, but even aside from his performance, I think Paul Dano in this movie is phenomenal. There are so many sequences that stand out in my head in this movie. The score from Johnny Greenwood is incredible. The cinematography is just like mind-blowing. It's really one of the best films ever made. The fact this came out the same year as No Country for Old Men, just like what an insane year for movies. But I absolutely love There Will Be Blood, and I think this is one of those examples of like a slow-paced period piece movie that is so incredibly well written with the dialogue, and even though it is that long in length, you don't really feel it just because of how immersive the movie is, and you're so sucked in to these characters and what they're doing that it really just makes it a breeze to watch. And I love revisiting There Will Be Blood. I love revisiting PTA's entire catalog, but this movie is just phenomenal. I love it a lot, and you should definitely watch it if you've never seen it. So what are some films that are 3 hours long that you think I should watch? Let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear what some of your favorite 3 hour films are. I think this whole like discourse behind whether or not films should be 3 hours is kind of funny. I know some people just don't have the attention span for it, but I definitely do. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.